Hey everybody, and welcome to part one of comparing military surplus firearm, in this case rifle prices, from 2012 to 2020. So we've got 10 years. At the time of these being filmed, this is the end of November 2022. That means in 2012, this was right before Sandy Hook happened, and it was pretty much the nail in the coffin for the military surplus market after people started panic buying, things went up in price, etc., etc. So it's a pretty accurate assessment of what prices were 10 years ago, which is pretty fun. It's been 10 years already. That time flies when you're having fun. Anyway, so I'm going to give you a couple of kind of Paul Harrell-esque caveats before we get into it. This is going to be a 4-part series. I will be posting them later on as time goes on, so be patient for those. If you don't see a firearm on here, just be patient. You might see it. So with that being said, these are all firearms that are in my collection. Contrary to popular belief, I'm not a billionaire, I'm not a trust funder, I don't have an unlimited amount of money, and I don't have every gun known to mankind, so I'm just using the guns that I own as a reference for what I saw back in 2012 and prior to that, but we're going to go with 2012 prices. So yeah, I don't own every gun, so if you're going to be coming in with, what about this one, what about that one? If you don't see it, I don't have it, and that's just the way it is. I've also been collecting for 20 years, so I didn't just get these all, again, from a trust fund in, a matter of 6 months or whatever. It's been a long time, and I've traded a lot, so there's a little caveat there. So yeah, and then another little thing is I'm going to explain this a little bit in these videos as well, just to kind of remind you. We're going by the condition of the piece that you're going to be seeing in front of you, not necessarily, because it's so subjective with military surplus. It was less subjective back in the day before it became a complete collector's market, as far as condition, manufacturing, different marks and all that stuff. So just kind of take that into consideration too. I'm going to be going by the example in front of you in the camera, like the condition and all that stuff, and just give you an average price. Now the prices are prices that I personally witnessed, not just from one source. If you get your pricing from one or two sources, that's not good. You need to use an empirical method to get the best deal. Otherwise you're going to go broke real quick. So I used, GunBroker is not really an accurate assessment. People do pay a lot for stuff on there. I use other auction sites like private auction houses that utilize platforms like Proxybid, HiBid, and all that stuff, and kind of use the empirical method to see what things are going for nowadays. Local gun stores, online sales from person to person, or collector to collector rather, and just what people have been saying they've been seeing things for at gun shows and whatnot. So taking all that information and compiling it together, that's what I've come up with. It's also US prices. I don't care about Canada or Europe or whatever things cost over there. Our market's a lot different. It's not comparable. So anyway, I think those are all the caveats I have. Maybe I'll add something later on that I missed, but that should be it. So without further ado, strap in and let me know what you think in the comments after you see these price differences. And let me know if you still think that it's inflation, which I said in the pistol video. Inflation means that the Big Mac meal, the #1 at McDonald's in 2012 was around $5. Now it should be around $8 to $10, not 25 to 30. So, yeah, we'll just go with that. Let me know what you guys think and enjoy. So we're going to start out with a Martini-Henry MKII rifle. So back in the early 2010s, these were pretty plentiful and nobody really knew about them or had a passion for them, sans a few black powder shooters, because the ammo is very expensive, and unless you make it yourself, it's really not worth it. You just have a nice wall hanger, but they were still a lot cheaper. So back in 2012, a cleaned Mark II version like this, you could get the unrestored ones for a little bit cheaper, but since this one is clean, we're going to be using that as the kind of price point basis. So a clean version of a Mark II, which is the earlier version than the later long lever ones, was going to run about $450 in this condition, which is actually pretty affordable. But again, the cost of the ammo and the availability of the ammo or lack thereof was kind of a deterring factor for a lot of people. Nowadays, this same rifle in the same condition is going to be $1,300 if you can find one in this shape. I think a lot of the short levers have been sold already, and the stash that IMA bought is drying up. Now, I did not pay that for this one a couple years ago. I got really lucky, but I paid about 2012 prices. But yeah, these things are really expensive nowadays because a lot more people want them and know about them. So yeah, $1,300 nowadays. Next up, we've got the French Model 1886-93 Lebel rifle. And back in the early 2000s, most French firearms were really not desirable, sans a few collectors like myself. And they went for a lot lower prices as a result. And so this particular example in average condition, it's used, but it's not in terrible shape, not in excellent shape. This would run for about $400 to $450. So we'll just say $450 as a price point for 2012. And I should have gotten more of these back in the day. Again, hindsight's always 20/20. But anyway, $450 in 2012. Now, because of what I mentioned in the pistol video, Battlefield 1 came out. World War 1 became a very popular thing with the Centennial. And now, if you can find one of these for sale, you're going to be paying $1,500 for one in this condition. So this is one of the most egregious price jumps based on pop culture, social media, and just the desirability of French firearms in general from certain people online that drew a lot of attention to French firearms, which sucks for people like me that used to get them for a lot lower price and actually appreciate them. So anyway, there's the 1886-93. Next up, we've got the German Gewehr 88 commission rifle, chambered in 8x57mm. This happens to be an 8805, and it is in okay condition. Not good, not bad. You're going to find a lot of these in a lot worse condition. Some of them are better. I've had a few of them come and go throughout the years, but this one we'll just say is an average condition. It's got a reproduction cleaning rod, just so you know. And these back in, when I first got my first one, I think I paid $80 for it. It was in really rough shape. It was dark and everything, and I think it was missing the bolt face, which is a big problem with these things. But anyway, it was $80. So I'm going to say back in the early 20 teens, like 2012-ish, this particular, a comparable example of just average condition. This has the bolt face on it. It's just missing the ejector, and the extractor isn't really working that well, so I'll have to figure that out. But anyway, it's an average condition, and they were going for about $150 any day. There were so many of these, not many people wanted them. I don't know why, but I wanted one, and I had a couple come and go throughout the years, like I said, and they're really fun to shoot. They're really cool. So yeah, about $150 in 2012. Now, for something like this in similar condition, you're looking at $700. Yeah, again, a lot of video games have influenced the price on this, and that's unfortunate because there's a lot of them made, and they're pretty cool. Very unique rifle. I love it. I'm glad to have a couple in the collection. And yeah, so there's the Gewehr 88, or I'm going to say 8805. 88s go for a little bit more. They're about 10% more than the 8805s because a lot of them were converted, and the ones that weren't demand like a 10% premium, so you just factor on 10% to the price. So there we go. Now we've got a cool one that some of you are going to be like, what the hell is that? And for those of you that know, you're going to be like, oh, I love these things. They're so cool and they're getting harder to find. We've got a Danish Krag Jørgensen rifle, model 1899. And these things were still collectible back in 2012 as they imported most of these in the 50s, 40s, and 60s after World War II, especially. Most of these came into the country and they were used and cut down a lot of times for deer rifles and stuff like that, sporting rifles. Anyway, this one's in original configuration. It's in average condition and it's not good, it's not bad. So again, we're going to be basing the price point on that. I did see a lot of these back in the day that were on the secondary market, like private collectors selling it to other people. And they were going for about $400 back in the day, which is not a bad price at all for something like this. The ammo sucks to get, but if you reload, you can do it. Anyway, nowadays I was looking at these, and I couldn't believe that. They're now about $1,000 for an 1889 like this. Even on auction sites, not Gunbroker, I'm talking about other like private auction houses that utilize online platforms to sell their items. Online bidding and stuff, and then just secondary market sales, all that stuff. I did factor in Gunbroker a little bit. Yeah, we're looking at about $1,000 for one of these guys now. So they're getting harder to find. There it is, the Danish 1889. Another rifle from 1889, the Swiss Schmidt-Rubin Model 1899. So this is 7.5 by 53.5, so it's GP90 ammo. Anyway, so these things are nice repeating rifles. People didn't really want to use these because there was always this fear of shooting GP11 through these and them not being able to handle the pressure and blowing up. So these are a little bit less desirable than the later like 9611, G11 and all that stuff, which we'll get to eventually. But anyway, these are great rifles, and it's funny because a few of these a year are still imported to the US, but the price, just like every other piece of surplus, has been creeping up steadily. So in 2012, these were all around, and they were about $300. Some of them I saw for $250, but this is a really nice condition one, so I'm going to say this would have been about $300 back in 2012. Nowadays, these are going for $600 in this condition, possibly $700, but I'm just going to say $600. So this one jumped one of the least out of all of these surplus rifles that I'll be going over. It just doubled. I know most of the pistols just doubled, but the rifles for some reason are a lot more expensive and jumped a lot more, which you're going to see here once we really get going. So there's the Schmidt-Rubin Model 1889. And now on to one of my personal favorites. I had several of these come and go throughout the years. But I'm not getting rid of this one. Made that decision final because they're so hard to get in this condition nowadays. The Argentine 1891 Mauser. This one's made by Ludwig Löwe, and it's an antique. Fires a 7.65 by 53 cartridge, which is a nice cartridge, a Mauser proprietary cartridge. Anyway, so these things are great, and 99% of these things have the crest rubbed off on them, or ground off on top. This particular example actually has the crest, and I wanted one for that reason. And they're very hard to find, and when you do, you're going to pay a little bit extra for them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the price without a crest, and then we'll go with a crest from 2012 until now, because most of you guys are going to find these without the crest on them. It's purely aesthetic, and it just adds to the collectability. It doesn't affect the functionality at all. These are great Mauser rifles. If you've never shot one, I would highly advise, if you can get one that's not sporterized, grab one if it's a good price. So I'm about to tell you what they're going for. So in 2012, an uncrested Argentine 1891 rifle like this was going to be going for about $175. Very, very cheap. They imported literally millions of these things in the 50s and 60s. A lot of these got cut down. But if you find one in original condition, which is not impossible at all, they were going to be going for about $175 all day. I saw them being traded and sold. And they're antiques, so it's really nice. You don't need an FFL if it's legal in your area. Nowadays, an uncrested one with the ground crest is going to be going for about $450. That's what I've been seeing them go for on, again, the auction sites that I've been talking about, private sales, etc., etc. And so that's about $450 for an uncrested one. Now, back in the day, a crested one like this is going to cost you a little bit more. It was going to be probably about $300 to $350. So we'll just say $350. Nowadays, a crested one in 2022 is going for about $1,000. That's what I've been seeing because of the fact that they're just so uncommon. And they're antiques, and people love the fact that you don't need paperwork, and you can still buy the ammo on certain websites. PPU still makes it. So there you go. For the 1891 Argentine Mauser, one of the best looking and finest Mauser rifles in my opinion. Next up, we've got another favorite of mine. I like these older rifles a lot, in case you couldn't tell. We've got the Carcano Model 1891 infantry rifle. So these were adopted in 1892 and used through the Second World War by the Italian military. So this one is an antique specifically, but that really doesn't affect the price that much in my opinion that I've seen. So it is what it is. Now, nobody likes Carcanos except nerds like me. And in recent years that has changed, and we'll talk about that in a second. But these things were super cheap back in the day. In 2012, for an 1891 infantry rifle like this, the cleaning rod and all that stuff, in average condition like this one is, you're looking at about $200 tops. I mean, some of them went for cheaper that were in rougher shape. Some of them went for a little bit more that were in nicer shape, obviously. But again, we're comparing the condition of the example you see in front of you. So about $200 for an 1891. Nowadays, thanks to video games and social media, YouTube and stuff like that, a lot more attention has been drawn to these for the historical value because of the First World War and the Second World War. And people realize that they're actually pretty decent rifles once you figure out how to use the sights. So now an 1891 infantry long rifle is going to be about $600 if you can find one. They're getting a lot harder to find. You find a lot of the 9141s, the World War II version, which is just fine too, and we'll get to that eventually. But for an 1891, you're looking at about $600 for one in shootable condition in average shape like this. 1891 was a good year for rifle technology and development. Here we have the Mosin Nagant M91 long rifle, or just the three-line rifle as it was called back in the day. And these things have their own collector's market, and they did back in the day, but they still weren't as expensive. This one's just a standard 1916. I believe it's a Chevsk. Let me see really quick. Yeah, it's a Chevsk. And it's nothing special. It's just a nice shooter grade. I went to the Balkans at some point. And you can see my hooves in there. I need to... Actually, I just trimmed them. They're not that long. Anyway, so this one for an average example. Back in the day, these were always more than 91s. They were kind of on par with Finnish Mosin Nagants, but not quite as expensive. So back in the day, a standard M91 rifle, shooter grade example like this, that's in average condition, a little bit more worn than usual, is going to run you about $200. And I saw them going all day, every day for that. Definitely should have bought one, but I was too busy with the cheaper 9130s, which we'll eventually get to, and never really got one of these until a couple years ago. Now, for an M91, you're looking at about $500 for a shooter grade like this. That's all said and done with all the auction sites that I've seen and the sources that I just told you. So yeah, $500. That was quite a jump as well. These are desirable too because of the video games, using these in the First World War and all that stuff, and then people have been making content on them, etc., etc. So yeah, go from $200 to $500 in 10 years. Another World War I era firearm is the Steyr M95 repeating rifle in originally 8x50. This one was rechambered into 8x56 rimmed in the interwar years by Bulgaria, and you can tell by the blonde stock. Anyway, so these rifles were plentiful and stuff like that. A lot of these were cut down in the 20s and 30s, made into the carbine length, but this one is a long rifle. So these are going to be a little bit harder to find because so many of them were cut down in the interwar years. But in 2012, you could get these, you can get one of these in nice shape like this for 300 bucks. They were always a little bit more pricey for the long rifles, but still 300 is not bad for back in the day. Nowadays, if you can find one of these long rifles, they're very hard to find. Even in the original 8x50 rim, they're harder to find because, again, most of these got updated to the 8x56 and were cut down into carbines at some point. So nowadays in 2022, if you can find one of these, you're looking at $700 easy for this. So I mean, it's unfortunate for all you young guys. I've made videos on that. I feel for you guys because this is a cool rifle. But again, video games and YouTube are the worst, or some of the worst enemies of the collector's community. So yeah, 700 bucks nowadays and 300 bucks back in 2012. Up next, we've got the Chilean Model 1895 Mauser rifle in 7x57mm, another Mauser proprietary cartridge. Great cartridge, great rifle, made by Ludwig Löwe, again in 1895 for the contract for Chile. And these are all antiques, which is really cool. Back in the day, in 2012 especially, I noticed that South American Mausers in general just kind of got a bad rap. You know, it was the, oh, it's just, you know, South American garbage, it's junk. Little did they know that these were actually made by Mauser in Germany under contract. So a lot of these old timers that just don't like foreign guns because they, you know, devalue, I guess, their Winchester Model 70s and whatnot. Anyway, so back in 2012, these things were literally being imported still, and they were going for $150. I'm not joking. $150 for a Chilean M95 in 7x57mm. Nowadays, these are going for $500 because of their antiques, and they're fantastic rifles, great shooters, and people just like them for the collectability of them. So yeah, there we go, the Chilean M1895. Alright, if you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll know that this is my favorite Mauser variant ever made, the Swedish M96 rifle in 6.5x55mm. So these things were still in the primary market back when I got in the game from Samco, which doesn't exist anymore, and their inventory was sold off throughout the years, so that's been said and done. Anyway, the Swedish M96, these things used to be very plentiful, very affordable, and nobody really knew what they were except for a small group of people. And hunters up here in Wisconsin apparently loved them because there were pretty much at every local gun store when I was just getting into the hobby around 2010, 2011, really hardcore. I've been collecting longer, but I started getting money at that point. Anyway, these were going for about 275 bucks at local gun stores, online, everything. 275 bucks. I should just say 250, but some of these were going for $3 because they were in nicer shape. This one's an average shooter grade condition, so this would have probably been a $275 rifle on the primary market at that point. And now something like this is going for $500. So not that big of a jump, which is good. I have a feeling that these are going to get more popular as time goes on and more word gets out. I'm guilty of spreading the good word of this rifle. I think it's the best Mauser rifle ever made, and it's just fantastic in every respect. But I won't go on too much of a tirade about that because that will make the video last like 2 days. So anyway, we got the Swedish M96. So here's a fun one that jumped quite a bit. Most U.S. surplus firearms, rifles especially, have gone through the roof, like I said in the pistol video, and we're going to explain, you know, this. This is probably one of the least popular ones, and it's still super insane how much it's jumped. So this is a Krag Jørgensen Model 1898, and it's in average to good condition, which a lot of them are. And these are some of my favorite, if not one of my favorite target rifles of all time. Extremely accurate, low recoil, really super easy to handle, buttery smooth bolt, great sights, etc., etc. I love these rifles. That's why I had regretted having to get rid of mine a few years ago and ended up getting this guy back in the collection. So in 2012, these were still a little bit expensive, but not super outrageous. In 2012, these were going for about $400 for an 1898 because they were so plentiful. And at the time, I really wasn't into the Krag Jørgensen. I thought they were old. You know, I was kind of young and naive and didn't understand how great they were. And I didn't get my first one until like 2014, and then had to get rid of it a couple years later, but that's a different story. Anyway, so yeah, you're looking at about $400 in 2012. Now, fast forward to 2022, and you're looking at least $1,200 for something in this condition for an 1898. I know it sucks. Some of them are going higher, some of them are a couple bucks less, but the mid-range that I've been seeing is $1,200. So it's a threefold increase in price in 10 years. I don't know why that is. Maybe people discovered how good they were. I don't know. People are hoarding them. I only have this one. That's all you really need. But it's also the oldest firearm you're allowed to use at Camp Perry because it's a centerfire smokeless powder U.S. firearm. So this is what I would use if I ever did match shooting at distance. Anyway, the 1898 Krag Jørgensen. Next up, if you know what this is, you already know what's coming. If you've been watching the market at all in the past 10 years, as I have, thank God I got this when I did. I actually got this one in 2012 and paid a lot less than they were even going for then. But anyway, so this is the Gewehr 98, a German Gewehr 98. It's not the Turkish marked one, which decreases the value a little bit by some people, but they functionally are the same, just different markings. So this is a 1916 Spandau dated Gewehr 98. Average condition, not good, not bad, just good. And great shooter, fantastic rifle to handle, and it's a nice piece of history. So back in 2012, I saw these things going for about $350 all day. This is a $350 rifle. A lot of my friends who were into reenacting and stuff were getting them for $350 in this condition. Nicer ones that bring 500, shittier ones that bring kind of $200, $250, like the Turkish ones that were in rough shape. But we're just gonna say $350 for an actual German Gewehr 98. Now, definitely thanks to Battlefield 1 and other people, other video games and other people talking about these on YouTube a lot and touting their greatness and the World War I Centennial. If you find one in this condition, if you can find one that's just average like this, you're looking at least $1,100. I don't know why that is. There's tons of these floating around. I don't know where they all went, but yeah, $1,100 for one just in shape like this, if you can find one. So that was one hell of a jump that I noticed too, but hey, with most German stuff, that's gonna happen. The Gewehr 98. Next up is another oddball one. Serious collectors will know what it is, and arguably is one of the finest Mausers ever made as well. Just very underrated and not known about. This is a Siamese, which is modern day Thailand, 1903 Mauser rifle. So these are chambered in 8x50 or 52, I forgot which one is the Danish in this. Anyway, it's an 8mm somehow cartridge that I haven't had access to yet. Definitely want to. These things are really cheap because of the fact that the ammo is not plentiful, and nobody really wants a Siamese Mauser because they think, oh, it's garbage. If it's not made in Europe or the US, and even if it's made in Europe in some countries, it's garbage. Well, that's completely the opposite, and that's fine by me. Keep them nice and cheap. So in 2012, I saw a lot of these being sold and whatever for $150, and in nice shape like this, even in very nice shape, $150, and people would just get them. I didn't know what the hell they were at the time, so I stayed away from them. It was kind of a foreign thing, so I understand why people are kind of skittish of them, but now that I have one, I cannot wait to get ammo for it, make some videos shooting this bad boy. So anyway, so $150 in 2012. These actually haven't jumped that much because of the reasons that I just listed. So in 2022, you can easily get one of these for about $300 to $350. We'll just say $300 because they're not that expensive. They might be going up recently because they're one of the last surplus guns that's affordable, and people just want to have a surplus gun for the sake of having one. It's a good thing, good place to start. It is a Mauser rifle, so it's well made. It's super smooth. Anyway, so yeah, these pretty much you could just say they doubled in price. And I hope they don't go any higher, and I hope we can start getting ammo for them. Steyr ammunition. Little shout out to you guys, Alex. Make some ammo for these guys. Anyway, we got the Siamese Model 1903 Mauser. Back to the Carcanos for a bit. I know this came out in the 1890s, but this is not going to be in chronological order. So we got the 1891 TS. These are made for like special troops like cavalry, mountain troops, artillery, stuff like that didn't need a long rifle per se, but still needed a carbine. And these were used also through the Second World War. So these come in a few different variants. There's earlier variants, the sideways bayonet lug, etc., etc. So we're just going to kind of go with this configuration, this condition right here. So in 2012, these were still pretty affordable. These were about, I don't know, $125, $150. We'll just say $150 for one of these things. And they weren't really popular, like I said earlier about the 1891. So these things really haven't jumped up in price because they were just on the primary market a couple years ago, which is where I got this one. 1918 dated. Woohoo! Anyway, or 1916. No, it's 1916 dated. Anyway, sorry, nerding out over my own stuff. All right, back on track. So I think I paid $260 for this, or something like that. $260. And that's not really that big of a price jump, but now since the market's not flooded with these anymore, the prices are going to start creeping up a little bit, as with most other surplus stuff. So not that much, 150 bucks to 260 bucks in 10 years. Pretty decent. In keeping on with the Carcano theme, again, this came out in the 1890s, specifically made for cavalry, but it was used by the same people that used the TS, if not more, because the bayonet was on the rifle at all times. So a little bit more convenient and nice compact rifles. I absolutely love these. I've had a 1938 cavalry carbine forever, but just got a few of these when they were coming into the country over the past couple of years. And again, about the same price. In 2012, these are like 150 bucks. Some are cheaper, some are a little bit more, like an early one like this. This is 1894 dated. Pretty cool. But yeah, we'll just say 150 bucks on average for something in this condition. Now they're going for about 250 bucks. So about the same as the TS. Great deals. If you haven't gotten one of these yet in this current batch, this is probably some of the last surplus you're ever going to see. I would highly advise just grabbing one, even if ammo is not abundant right now. It will be because it's still being manufactured. The clips are a little bit harder, or the end blocks are a little bit hard to get, but I mean, you can get it. If you get the rifle, the other stuff will follow. I usually get the other stuff first and the rifle follows, but I'm trying to change that method of acquiring things. So yeah, the 1891 Carcano Cavalry Carbine. So this is the US model 1903. This one was made by Rock Island in 1918 and is in all correct World War I configuration with the finger groove stock, the high hump handguard, and the straight bolt handle, and the obvious barrel dates and receiver dates. Again, 1903s are one of those things where depending on what features it has, what year it was made, blah, 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 desirability factor, it varies in price. So I'm just going to go with this particular example, which is why I told you all the details. Not bragging, I'm just giving you a frame of reference for a World War I era 1903. Which are becoming increasingly harder to find because a lot of these were updated in World War II and in the interwar years. So, back in 2012, a rifle like this would be about we'll say $600 for one of these. And you could get them and nobody really cared about the World War I part of it until, again, video games started coming out in the Centennial. Then it got really, 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 really high priced. And a rifle like this now in original World War I configuration in this condition, is going to be going for at least $1,500. So that's a little bit more than doubling in price, but the dollar amount is pretty significant for people that are just getting into the collector's hobby. 1903 A3s are $1,000. I don't have one of those, but I figured I'll mention that. World War II 1903s are like $800. It's really pricing people out of having a 1903. Again, glad I got this way back in the day when it was still affordable. I think I paid $7 for this, which is about what they were going for just a couple years after that. So there's the 1903 for you. And we'll end this video with my favorite battle rifle of the First World War, the US Model 1917 service rifle. So this is chambered at 30-06, just like the 1903. I'll go through the history on another video. I won't bore you with that on this. Anyway, there were three manufacturers. There were Eddystone, Remington, and Winchester. This happens to be a Winchester, which is always going to command a premium because they made less of them. And I don't know, I just like Winchester firearms. It's pretty, I don't know why, it's just one of those things. It's not like a deal breaker if it's not a Winchester, but I prefer to get one if I can. Managed to get one of these a few years ago and absolutely love this thing. Great shooter. I love these rifles. I absolutely think they're one of the best bolt-action rifles ever made. But we're going to get to the pricing now. So in 2012, we'll just say a Winchester like this was going to be going for about we'll say $400, right? So these things I'm sorry, we're going to back that up. We're just going to give it 50 bucks more. $450 because it's a Winchester. Eddystone and Remington were going for $375 to $400. This is going for about $450. So I promised we would keep on the condition and the example that's in front of you and the manufacturing and all that stuff. So $450 bucks for this thing in 2012. Nowadays, a Winchester 1917 in great shape like this is going to be running you at least $1,000. So a little bit more than double in price again. And these are actually one of the less desirable ones out of the U.S. weaponry, just like the Krag. I'd say this is the second most non-inflated one because these things are fantastic. They made millions of them. They were used throughout the Second World War, actually through Korea by some U.S. allied forces, some UN forces. Very interesting. And anyway, so these things are about $1,000 now for a Winchester. You can get it at Eddystone or Remington for $800, possibly $900 depending on condition. But again, the Winchester is going to be running a little bit more. So with that, this concludes part one of the comparing prices from 2012 to 2022 rifle videos. I have a lot more rifles than I do pistols, so that pistol video is only going to be one part like you saw. This will be two, possibly, well, probably three parts because I got a lot more to go through. And hope you enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments what you think, what you've observed. And yeah, I look forward to hearing from you. If you want to support my work, you know how to do that. It's just like every other content creator. like this video, give it a thumbs up, you know, and share it out if you want to, if you think this is interesting, and then comment below with what you think. And if you want to support me financially, which is pretty cool, a lot of people already do, you can do that via Patreon, link is in the description, or become a YouTube channel member. $5 a month or more on either method of support gets into my Discord server, which is really fun. A lot of people on there, really good conversations, and I do some exclusive drops on there, get ideas, it's pretty interactive, etc., etc. Also, if you like military surplus gear and stuff like that, mikesmilitaria.com is my online shop. And I'll put the link to that is also in the description at the bottom of the description. So go there and get your surplus fix for gear because you can't afford one of these rifles anymore because the damn market's been so inflated. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you on part 2.